Welcome to the Lost Signals Reviews, the American Film Institute's Top 100, where we critique the supposed 100 greatest American movies of all time. Join us as we decide if they're worthy of the Mott's Top 100.
Or Mott's.
Hello, and welcome back to The Lost Signals discusses the AFI Top 100. Today's film that we're going to be discussing is the number 99 on the list, the 1995 Pixar movie, Toy Story. A movie that we all remember fondly from childhood.
Speak for yourself.
Except for Scott, and perhaps Ian and Chris. So maybe I just remember it fondly. Anyway.
Not everyone.
I was in my 20s when I saw this.
I'm your host, Steve Formosi, and I'm joined today by Ian Manzer.
I do not have a friend in Ready to Me.
Scott Thurlow.
To infinity, but no further.
And Chris Morgan.
Inconceivable.
And I'm going to do the funny log line for this one. It's Woody got a buzz, and vice versa.
Mm-hmm.
And we're going to start off with plot, and Chris is going to kick us off.
Okay, this kid named Andy has a bunch of toys. One is named Woody, voiced by Tom Hanks. And Andy has a birthday and gets another toy, Buzz Lightyear, voiced by
Tim Allen.
Tim Allen. And
Tom Allen.
Tom Allen. And Woody's jealous, and he what was I saying? Buzz Lightyear gets lost. Everybody thinks that Woody killed him, and so basically Woody goes after Buzz, and they end up in the midst, and they through going to a pizza place and end up in the grab your toy machine thing, end up in the clutches of Sid, the evil kid, stereotypical kid with braces who likes to blow up and destroy his toys. And though basically the rest of the film is about them trying to escape, and it's a ticking clock because Andy and his family are moving, and they have to they have to rely on Chekhov's skyrocket to get to get them back on the moving truck, and in time to make Andy realize that he did not leave his favorite toys at home. The end.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. That is what happens.
Toys win.
Woody has to go rescue Buzz to become friends and then get back to Andy.
Toys prevail, yeah.
But do they? I know the sequels, sorry, say they become friends, but Woody's the worst toy.
He's a dick, for sure, if you will. No pun intended.
Yeah, no.
He has no moral core to him. He is thoroughly unlikable, and that's not just because he's Tom Hanks. It's also written like even his caring for Buzz at the end can be construed as he needs Buzz to get back in the good graces of his posse, if you will.
Are you saying that Woody is flaccid?
Yes, I am.
That's a stretch.
Go on.
Sorry. But so I think that it is unfortunate that at no point does it make it clear that Woody doesn't need Buzz to get back in with all the other toys, because that his initial motivation is clearly, I mean, maybe we're talking about a different question at this point, but like his initial motivation is clearly to not leave Buzz behind because he can't afford to, because he won't be accepted back if he doesn't bring him back. Now, I remember watching this movie as a kid and completely believing the transition from like being selfish to, actually wanting to go and get Buzz back in with and make sure that Buzz isn't left behind.
You weren't selfish when you wanted a Buzz?
Chris, I'm going to have to ask you to stop trying to make puns. They've almost all failed so far.
But, if you don't try, you'll never succeed.
That's true. I do love a bad pun. So I anyway, let's get back to the plot at hand.
I'll keep them coming.
I think that this is a fairly solid plot. Yes, the motivations of the characters are definitely questionable, but that doesn't necessarily infringe on like what I'm going to say about the plot here. And like what I am going to say about the plot is that it has a pretty strong like through line. It's didn't lose me at any point watching this again. You know, I've probably seen this movie 4 or 5 times, but I haven't watched it in at least 10 years at this point. It wasn't as good as I remembered it, but I think that it had a fairly strong plot. I'm leaning towards a 3 for plot. I could probably be convinced to give it a 2. But what do you guys think?
Well, to join in on the punt thing, speaking of the Woody at hand, Woody is the core protagonist of this, but also the core narrative of this, like following his transition. And I'm questioning his arc in this, which is what I have to assess the plot on here. And I don't think he grows as a character.
Woody's a bit stiff.
Yes. Thank you, Chris.
All right, you redeemed yourself with that one a little bit.
That one worked better.
Thanks for the setup.
Buzz does have an arc throughout this in where he thinks he is the Buzz Lightyear, realizes that he is a clone, if you will, or a toy version of it. He tries flying and fails and lands on the stairs, but then in the end, with the propelling of the rocket, he saves Woody and flies back in the. I just don't think Woody necessarily, who you're following throughout this.
You don't think he has an arc?
I think that it's a questionable arc.
I think that the arc that he had, like, I think that you can question him as a character, but I think his arc is pretty clear. I guess is the way. No, I think that by the end, you're supposed to understand about his character, and I think that it is clear that you're supposed to understand about his character, and this is what the plot is that...
supposed to is a very interesting way to describe that, because I feel that if you understand what they were attempting to do, and they inherently failed to...
I don't think they inherently failed.
Well,
I think that you can...
It's subjective.
Yeah, I think
it's ambiguous, and not the intent was not to be ambiguous, and it was ambiguous to whether Woody grew at all in this.
I somewhat lean towards that.
Okay.
So let me jump in. No. I got you. No, so like as alluded to, I have no affinity. I know like Toy Story is a beloved franchise, and this one is obviously the first in it, like put on the map. But I had never saw it as a kid, so I saw it like bits and pieces years later. So I'm leaning towards a 2. It's a fine like plot for what like story for what it is. And yes, you can like poke holes in the motivations, as you mentioned, and like whether or not you think the main character's arc was fulfilled and or genuine, I guess we'll say. Mm. So like, it was entertaining enough. Like surely like you're more entertained if you're a kid with this. That's the target audience. Now we'll get to something like later on, a different question as to why we're even doing this movie for the AFI. So I'm just saying, like, taken at face value as the narrative, I'll give it a fine 2. There was nothing like wrong with it, but it wasn't super strong either, and a lot of it, like you said, bleeds over into character motivations, given for the nature of like toys are alive and they have their own lives and so forth.
I'm not even getting into the plot holes of the rules they set up in that.
Yeah, I understand, and which there are at least one big one for sure.
I'm sure that every single Buzz Lightyear, if every one of them came out thinking that they were actually Buzz Lightyear, and they can at will talk to humans, but it's just custom in a toy tribe of not talking to humans, every single Buzz Lightyear should have been, I am Buzz Lightyear, like, who are you, alien, to whoever purchased. I'm overlooking that flaw because it's a child's movie. And every child wants to be like, oh, my toys are like doing things while I'm not there. But I'm going into the fact that I just think that
Woody's a terrible person.
Like I like him in 2 and 3, which I haven't seen the 4th one yet, and I think he grew quite a bit in that part. But in this first one, I was actually surprised by how unlikable he was, and I think whatever the intent was, I feel that they, at least to me, failed at that. So I'm going to give it a 2 though, because it's fair.
You say it detracts a bit from the narrative, and I somewhat agree. I'm just saying overall it's fine, so I'll give it a 2, but certainly not a 3.
It's fine. It's got a plot too.
Well argued.
I think you convinced me in a certain way. I would agree that there are elements of Woody's character that you can take one way or the other, and looking at this from an adult's perspective definitely gave, I mean, not that I haven't seen it since I was an adult, but like looking at it through the lens of having reviewed movies for the last 5 years, yeah, Woody's kind of a shitty character. And not a shitty character, but a shitty,
He's insufferable.
moralistic person.
And not just because he's Tom Hanks.
Yes, you've said. You've said. But yeah, I would agree. I think I'm going to give it a 2 as well. So I think it's 2s all around, right?
Yeah.
Is that because Tom Hanks collaborated with who's that dickhead from Fox and the Killing Lincoln thing?
I have no idea what you're talking about.
Yeah, Tom Hanks and God, what's his name?
Bill O'Reilly?
Bill O'Reilly. They
What?
worked together on a movie. Yeah,
Okay.
Killing
movie?
Lincoln. Yeah, Killing
No.
Lincoln.
I just
Oh,
I liked Tom Hanks when he was a younger actor. I haven't liked his recent work, but you could watch many of our episodes about that. And
yes.
I distaste
yes,
for
yes,
Tom
yes,
Hanks.
yes. Anyway, we're going to move on to themes, and that's going to be me. There's this theme of, so Woody's, I guess, big theme in this is
Bow chicka bow.
what
wow.
happens when you... Yeah, it's bow chicka bow wow. It's what happens when you stop being the favorite, right? And how you react to that. And I think there's, despite the fact that he has a terrible reaction to it, I think there's a lot of interesting discussion here about jealousy and losing your place in the society that you are in, or in the niche that you have built. And I think that's a lot of what this film is about. It's kind of like, I think the message to kids was supposed to be, whether or not this came across, you guys let me know, but it was supposed to be, you have to know who you are at your core and not be concerned with momentary changes that are going on around you, right?
Sure. I mean, yes.
And
Go ahead.
and that was supposed to be Woody was supposed to be discovering that throughout the movie. Now, granted, as you mentioned, it's in doubt whether or not he actually,
Achieves that.
understands this by the end of the movie, or if he's just trying to save his own ass. I tend to side on it because I like this movie when I was a kid, and that's part of how I remember it. I tend to side on the fact that on the idea that he did discover that he was friends with Buzz by the end of the movie, and that's why he tried to save him at the end instead of he was just trying to save his own ass, which was what he was trying to do earlier. And I think they were trying to juxtapose those two against each other. But yeah, I'll let you guys.
So I'm going to put up a scenario. Steven and I get captured by a serial killer.
Bye.
And you two think that Steven killed me first. So he's trying to get you to help him, and he holds up my arm that's been severed
Your severed arm, yes.
to pretend that I'm there to convince you. Now, granted, he did not kill me, but you think he did, and then he actually stumbles to show my severed arm that he's holding it, and you're like, holy shit, I'm out of here. I think Woody's the worst person in the
He certainly is a
world.
bumbling fool. This may be going to character, but go on.
I agree with the idea of what their intent was noble for what they're trying to do, and I think that for a kids movie, you don't have to have the nuance. You have to kind of paint in broad brushes, and I think that they got across what they were trying to do. Even if as an adult, I think that perhaps they didn't, but
It's not as nuanced as you would like it to be, I guess.
or it comes off improperly
Right.
as an adult, where it maybe as a child it seems noble.
Gotcha.
Yeah,
But I agree with what their intent was.
I feel, yeah. So you mentioned something. So I think it's almost like knowing who you are. Like you said, so the Buzz thing, like you said, he thinks he's the only one. Like he's under the impression that he's on an alien planet and so forth. And he slowly comes to a relation, through Woody, that you're just a toy. This is where your place in life. Accept it. It's fine, but it's not what you think it is. So they sort of teach each other something, to a small degree. But yeah, like that certainly seems to me the intent, both of those things, the intent of the thematic elements here. And yeah, like perhaps it speaks to you more if you're a younger audience than it does to our jaded selves.
You may not be the Buzz Lightyear, but you can be a Buzz
Yeah,
Lightyear.
exactly. So like, it's fine. Again, like it's not poorly handled or like unclear or anything. And like as we all just said, it probably will mean something more to you if you're like 10, 12, 8 or whatever, like
Right.
younger versus like adult, like I said, us who are just who we are at this point. But it's still perfectly fine. So I'll give it like an okay 1. I don't think it's enough, like terrible enough or anything, or again mishandled to slap a 0 on it.
No, I agree. I liked Steve. I liked your point on being who you are, being true to yourself, that kind of stuff. They're good. It's a good theme. 1.
There is I do want to mention.
I don't mean to sound dismissive. It's just that you said it really well,
Yeah,
and
I hear
that's the point I was trying to make.
Appreciate that. There's like I do like a part of this. I think it kind of falls into the theme is like that they have certain things that happen early in the movie that come back at the end of the movie, but like when they happen in the beginning of the movie, they're derisive, and at the end of the movie, they're kind of triumphant, right? Like the most famous and obvious one is the falling with style thing, right? Like it's not, I'm not flying, I'm falling with style, and I think that plays into that theme like quite a bit, and I think that's like that's
fair.
where the writing really shines is in moments like that.
Also, you can look at the idea of the problems that Woody has with Buzz are unimportant when you consider the problems that you have if you're captured by Sid. So there's like,
True, like
if you have an
uniting the
idyllic
things.
lifestyle, you should appreciate what you have versus what the horrors out there could be.
Or perhaps
Yeah.
friendship forged under trouble, against a united enemy.
All right, so that's gonna be ones all around for theme,
Yeah,
right?
I think so.
And then let's go on to antagonist Ian.
So if Woody's the protagonist, Sid is the easy choice here, but he's really only introduced as the antagonist for like the latter half
Yeah, exactly.
of it. And in a sense, it's Buzz for the first half to Woody, and then it switches to Sid when they both get captured.
Mm.
But I would say that moreover to Woody's main antagonism and the impetus for all his troubles is the introduction of Buzz. So I would say that he's likely to, if you agree with me that Woody's the main protagonist here.
Well, it's iffy, right? Because it almost becomes like a buddy cop movie, or at least a buddy movie, when they're forced to work together.
Because
to
it's a buddy
escape.
horror movie.
Yeah, but like before that, right? He views him as a rival,
Yeah.
someone to be like get gotten rid of. Or like he wants to remain Annie's favorite toy.
Yeah.
Buzz presents a problem because he is new shiny thing and is now threatening Woody's position as such. It's like, yes, it sort of switches. Like it's almost both, because if, like you said, if indeed we're supposed to view it through Woody's storyline and viewpoint, then of course that's the case until it switches when they have to fight against, again, like I said, united against a common enemy, which ostensibly makes them friends, and then they fight against a more antagonistic and threatening force. So I don't know, like you can like cut it up kind of like, I think it's effective either way, right? Like if you cut it off like if you call it when they get trapped in the claw thing, and then that's when Sid gets them, and then now they're in Sid's clutches, and now they have to figure out a way to escape and enact a plan there. So like, yeah, like you can like 50-50 split it. I think it's pretty good though. Like certainly, like you can definitely see and feel Woody's antagonized by Buzz's presence for sure, and like how the way Buzz presents himself and is arrogant about it and so forth, and like he doesn't realize he's not the real Buzz Lightyear and that there are thousands like him in the world. So like I think they sort of teach each other something.
No
maybe.
one's special.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe that's the theme.
Yeah.
But
That's really what Disney's teaching people.
But so it's a Fight Club thing. But regardless, I think if it's half and half, I think they're both effective. Buzz being the first half, and then Sid being the second half. I'll give them like a 0.5 each, probably adding up to a 1.
And by the way, Detroit Become Human owes Toy Story some money.
Sure. Someone should always be sued, of course. So, yeah, so I'll give Antagonist a fairly solid 1.
the more you guys talk, the more I'm like wondering if Woody isn't the antagonist, because he's a narcissistic little piece of shit, isn't he? I mean, because he's sitting there. I mean, it's
he
his.
can be.
It is kind of his fault. I mean, he wants to be the number one toy, and he's got everybody around him thinking he's number one, accepting that he's number one. And Buzz comes in here, and it's kind of his fault that Buzz is.
You don't have to be likable to be the protagonist.
No. But my whole point is that it's basically it's Woody's narcissism that like kind of puts everything into play.
He's an anti-hero. He's a flawed protagonist. Also, you can argue that Andy is the real villain of this, because if
I thought one of you might try that. So
that his toys were alive, which they are alive, like he shouldn't be a fickle god.
That's true. He's like throwing them around, and he's like, yeah, he is kind of fickle. Like, oh, who's his favorite? Daddy, pick me.
I thought one of you might argue for that.
So, I think it's really. I think you cast a really interesting light on this by calling out Buzz as the antagonist. I think you're probably right, at least for the first
Woody.
half.
The antagonist.
No, not talking to you.
Sorry.
That's all right. I don't think Woody's the antagonist.
He's not looking at your Woody.
I think Woody's the protagonist. If anything, like almost like verging on anti-hero, I guess, if that's what we're talking about. But Buzz as the antagonist is interesting because he's certainly not the antagonist the whole movie, right? Like he's the antagonist the
Agreed
first half.
with that.
And then that makes it like a more complex character piece, because then it becomes like the two opposing forces in the first half of the movie have to join forces
That's what I'm saying.
to oppose a
greater enemy.
A greater. Yeah, it's like the greater good is what they're like trying to accomplish by getting back.
I agree in a lot of ways, because I didn't cast Buzz in a bad light. In fact, I think he has an interesting arc.
Right.
I just think that Woody, who is the primary protagonist, doesn't have an interesting arc.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah, I mean, we'll talk about that in a minute. But I think Buzz and Sid kind of combined for antagonist duties, as I think you said, Scott.
That's pretty much how I'm viewing it.
That being said, I think that I think Buzz is actually a more interesting antagonist.
Certainly.
But Sid's like domain, his room, is the most interesting set piece in the entire movie by like a wide margin, I think. Like all the the misfit toys
Deformed
that he has in his room are like makes this almost into like a horror movie at certain points, and it's great. Like I love that style change into that. So I'm gonna give both of them a 1 and an overall 1 for antagonists.
I agree.
All right, you kind of had me talked into it, because if we're, I mean, I like
0.5 each is how I'm doing.
Well, yeah, because I mean, if you consider it an antagonist and not, a villain, so to speak, because Sid is a pretty stock character.
Sure, he's almost like a force of nature, at least viewed through the eyes of the toys.
But I think if you consider that Buzz is an antagonist to Woody, that's much more interesting.
I mean, he doesn't intend to be. But
his mere presence.
Yeah.
Is like
I can see it. It'll be a soft one, but I'm still at the end of the day give it a 1.
Fair.
Woody's got a soft one?
Yep.
A soft
See,
one.
come on, you failed to capitalize on that.
Ah.
Fun.
All right, so Scott, why don't you get us into protagonists?
All right. Well, speaking of Woody's, yeah. So like you guys said, like he's kind of a dickish character. Again, at this point, like we can see that clearly. Like I don't know again how kids would view it. They probably like, oh yeah, he's a cowboy. Of course, he set up like your traditional like Western hero in all senses of the term Western, if you will. But yeah, like
good observation.
He makes like dickish moves. Like when what was it when the 8 ball falls down in like the little crack, he's like, oh, I can accidentally have Buzz fall down there, therefore he'll be out of the picture. It's like he's not making moralistic moves, as one of you mentioned, but he's certainly supposed to be the protagonist now. And one of you also said it doesn't have to be likable to be that. So I'm sort of torn about it. Like I'm leaning towards a 0 because of the questionability, if you will, of like, does he really actually become friends or fulfill his arc as intended or as presented to us?
See, it kind of threads are. It doesn't go 100% to selling him as redemption, which I've established already, but nor does it sell him as an anti-hero. Their intent is to make him have the redemption there. So it doesn't work fully on either way it could have gone.
Might be one kind of say.
I think the most damaging thing is I don't find him a compelling protagonist. I find almost everyone around him more interesting.
Yeah, that's a good point too.
Not necessarily in the James Bond style, which is supposed to be he's not supposed to be a neutral mass protagonist. He's supposed to be a character on his own, making decisions, and he's just not compelling.
Yes, the fact that like it's a running joke of ours, but I don't also particularly like Tom Hanks even just voicing a character. So like it adds to like some irritation towards it, if you will, above and beyond the actual characterization that Woody has in this iteration of Toy Story. So I'm leaning towards a 0 as also. I'll leave off there.
I'm sitting there trying to figure, because I think Woody's insufferable. When I first saw this movie back in the 90s, I thought he was insufferable.
Well, you were 40 years old at the time.
Oh, eat shit. Eat a Woody. And, but I mean, like narratively, I guess he works as a protagonist, but I found him grating. I mean, in all honesty, I found him grating. He's narcissistic.
He's petty for sure.
He's definitely petty.
And generally, he's cowardly in the face of antagonism.
Exactly.
Until the end. So I honestly, I'm not 100% sold on his turnaround, but I'm definitely more sold on it than all three of you guys.
Yeah, clearly,
for sure.
yes.
I like.
I think that. Sorry, Chris. Did I?
No. Go on.
I think that I'm probably going to give Woody a 1 in this instance because I do believe his turnaround at the end. I get where you could say that, he was just being selfish the entire time, and I understand why they didn't exactly spell it out as much as they could have. But I think that what's there is enough for me to say that he actually was, like, that is his arc, that he became more selfless by the end of the movie, and he actually did want to be friends with Buzz.
Wait, go on. Sorry.
And, I mean, that was basically it.
But his motivation at the beginning was to redeem himself in the eyes because everybody else thought that he put put Buzz out to pasture.
He's doing a good deed for a bad
For a
reason.
selfish reason, yeah.
No, that's my argument.
Yeah, no,
is
I get
that that's my whole point. Is like I'm saying like
Right.
his motivation, and I understand what you were talking about with this turnaround, but I'm still wondering if his turnaround isn't kind of like self-motivated to a certain degree. I don't believe that he's truly altruistic, whereas I believe Buzz is.
Yeah, I'm saying at this point, I think Woody's getting a soft 0, if you will.
Well,
Woody's getting soft.
I don't know, we could always talk. So many.
Didn't anybody at Pixar think of this?
I'm using them all up.
Yeah, I'm sure they did. Disney has a long history of making horrible jokes. Anyway, my entire reasoning is that there is a point there, the speech that Woody makes when he's trapped underneath the thing, where he's like, "You should just get out of here, Buzz. Like, leave me trapped under this with the
Until
toolbox."
he sees a way of getting out of it.
The way of getting out of it was Buzz helps him out. I mean, I get it. Yeah, I understand why you can not believe it, but for me, it was enough for me to believe that transition.
I just think you're being selfish by giving you a 1 while the rest of us are giving you 0s.
Well, I'm the Woody of the group.
Mm-hmm.
So we are.
Absolutely.
The biggest Woody of the group.
Well, I'm still sticking with the 0.
All right, I'm going to give it a 1.
But I see your point. I'm just, again, my visceral gut reaction is, and as we talked about it even still, it's just weak.
Yeah, I'm like going to say narratively, is he a good protagonist? Well, on the surface, yes, but giving that his motivations are what they are or are not what they should be, I'm going to definitely give him a 0.
Okay. Cool story, bro. I'm going
Thanks,
to
man.
stick with a 1. Sorry, I don't mean to be
Oh, good. Go on.
rudely dismissive.
Now we're all being
You're the Woody of the group.
We're going to go on to supporting, talking over Ian with Chris.
Well, if we're talking about supporting, then I definitely have to say that I throw Buzz in there as well. But I
certainly the most important.
yeah, but I really liked the potato head. I liked the ass kissing joke where he took his lips off, and that was great. I actually
And he really wants Mrs. Potato Head, and
he
gets
does he does get Mrs. Potato Head. No, but I actually do like the other toys. I actually like them a lot more. I don't understand, why Belle likes Woody at the beginning. That is who Bo Peep.
Bo Peep.
Bo Peep. But no, I found I'm a big fan of Wallace Shawn, so of course I like him as Rex. I was a big fan of all the rest of the toys. I thought they were genuinely likable. I thought they were manipulated a lot by Woody. I'm sorry, I keep trashing Woody, but that's the simple fact.
Seems clear to us that that's what he's doing.
He's a horrible person or a toy. But my whole point is all the other toys I like a lot. I think they were much more interesting, I was much more with them when I was watching them, than I was when it was, just Woody or Woody and Andy. I like the interaction with the other toys a lot. So on the strength of that, I'll give the supporting a 1.
Yeah, I'll say certainly Buzz, of course, is like when he becomes a supporting character. Like I said, it's almost a buddy movie at the point where they're working together. But I will say this, maybe you talk about it more in style. So Sid's toys, they're like the Boo Radley of toys, pretty much, right?
Oh my God,
they're supposed to be all scary and deformed, and they sort of are, but they're trying to help. They are sympathetic to the situation as well. And the rest of Andy's toys, Rex and Slink and all that, all of them. I'll give a shout out to the Army guys. I thought that was pretty good.
Oh yeah,
I like their whole little segment there. So yeah, it all makes sense, and they clearly have. It's very heavily implied / shown out, right, that they have a history with each other, and they sort of have their hierarchies, and it all again works and makes sense. And without, of course, if it was just Andy or Woody and Buzz, then it would fall flat because you need a whole menagerie of toys to for me to make sense and fill it all out. Of course, if you're a 10-year-old kid, you'd have a shitload of toys, and each of them would have their little role there. So yeah, supporting characters works pretty well, in fact. And like you said, the voice work is quite good on all of them.
See, I had nothing but Ninja Turtles toys when I was growing up. So I imagine if they were alive, it would just be massive battles.
Fighting each other all day, every day.
But
that'd be awesome.
The one problem I have is a lot of the secondary characters were in the tradition of what a lot of kids' comedies have become, maybe always have been to a certain extent, are a lot of we're going to hire an actor to play that role as a comedian because they're playing themselves for comedic stylings.
No, I get what you mean.
And they don't have much. I thought that the Iron Man actually did have quite a bit of time on screen, which surprised me. But I think that really Sid's toys had a lot more interesting subplots than any of the other characters did.
Oh, I agree.
I also like Sid's sister. She had
I agree.
Dressing up Buzz.
Yeah,
and,
she did a nice role.
Yeah.
True.
She was good. I wanted to mention Sid's toys. I think basically everybody's been mentioned at this point, but I want to mention Sid's toys. The most moral characters in this entire movie.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, true.
By a wide margin.
The least judgmental?
Least judgmental. They helped everybody that they encountered because they knew what true horror was.
Yeah, exactly. That's a good point.
So everyone in life, the major theme is you should have that really harrowing experience so you become a good person.
I guess.
Yeah.
That's Toy Story.
That's what Toy Story says.
Teaching kids.
Just kids, go through something horrible. You'll be a better person for it. Who knows what Sid's gone through in his life, though. Maybe he'll become a worse person for it. Anyway, you guys mentioned Slinky. I thought was pretty good. The one character that hasn't been mentioned yet, RC Car.
What did we miss? Yeah, that's right.
And the binoculars. I don't even remember what that guy's name was, but RC Car had a lot of personality for not having any lines or anything like that.
That's true.
And being mostly controlled by other characters throughout the thing.
Yeah.
An interesting character for
given its role.
Yeah, for a movie like this, I think that there's a lot you could go into if you thought more deeply about that character, I guess. But I like the supporting characters.
I was gonna say, the one I meant to tell you, the all the little Martian things, the little aliens
things.
I loved it because they're like, "You've been chosen."
Yeah.
Oh, I've been. I mean,
Speaking of,
they're
cult,
just all cult, they're just all cult followers.
If you're born in the cult, and all you know is the claw.
The claw.
Claws
the
are
claw.
gut, and it chooses you. But yeah,
that part was pretty great.
I'm giving it a solid 1 secondary for sure.
All right. So that's one's all around for secondary.
Sure.
Yep.
Dialogue with me. So, we noticed at the beginning of this movie, I never knew this before, but Joss Whedon and Joel Cohen were both writers on this film. I thought that the dialogue was pretty solid, especially for a kids movie. I thought that there was a lot of kind of higher level conversations that happened than you'll usually see in a kids movie. There was things. Well, there was meaning behind what the characters were saying, more so than you would usually see in a movie like this. And like, it's tough to say what's good dialogue in terms of a kids movie because most kids movies are atrocious because they have to like you have to make things very simple, and like it's very hard to make a really good movie that appeals to both children and adults, I think. And I think that Toy Story does. I think the reason that it's on the AFI Top 100, and I think the reason that it appeals to people still, a lot of it has to do with dialogue in this. Especially like talking through issues between Woody and Buzz. They both are at odds throughout so much of this movie. And even if you don't agree with them, you understand where they're both coming from, and they're both coming from like obvious like places of jealousy, like things like just raw feelings that you have as a kid, like feeling of jealousy, this feeling of like being right, like I have to be right no matter what in terms of Buzz,
entitled superiority,
right?
Yep.
On both ends,
right? Of course, and like I think that the dialogue does a good job of showing that throughout this without like making it too complex or too simple. I think that's a line that they had to walk while they were doing this. And you guys are all shaking your heads, so perhaps you won't agree with me. But what do you think?
No, I'm saying I'll say I was debating this one. It was like the most iffiest one I was mulling over, is because you're right though. Like the point you made at the end is a good point. That like it's a very fine line to try to tread to do that. Like you obviously have to, like, not obviously, but they often will have things for adults at least to keep them here and there. Like there was actually a couple of jokes that I laughed at that I definitely would have understood as a kid or thought were as funny. So like, yeah, I'll give him credit on that. And like, yes, you're right. Like sort of Woody's showing Buzz's true nature, if you will, of what he is and like, you know, and where he fits in, and like them in theory somewhat learning something about themselves along the journey. So like it's fine enough. Like, yeah, of course, like I'm not gonna be laughing my ass off because it's many of the jokes are for kids, but not all. So like I guess I'll say it works more than it doesn't, even though I'm not gonna say it's fucking amazing or anything like that. But I really can't shit on it too much either. So it might be a soft one, but it's perfectly fine, and maybe like you said, Steve, like perhaps better than average than you'll find in a movie of this nature.
To infinity and beyond. I mean, that's became
it's cultural.
Osmosis. You're right about everything you said. I mean, I can't really take away from that. They hired good comedians, even though oftentimes they'll hire like comedians to punch up things, and they had two talented screenwriters for this. And they didn't really need the punch-ups. They didn't need the forced jokes in this.
Yeah.
They hired comedians to do jokes. They did their jokes, especially in the beginning of the film. And I think, yeah, it worked.
I read your body language all wrong.
No. I mean, I agree with you, but there is something I want to say about children's movies and so forth. And I think this is one thing where, like, you know, Pixar or Miyazaki does. And I trying to remember the quote. I had heard it. I think Terry Pratchett said, you know, what is the difference when you write, I think he wrote both children and adults. And basically the thing was he doesn't treat a children's story any different than an adult, aside from, you know, profanity or situations and so forth.
This is Pratchett or Neil Gaiman?
No, it's not Neil Gaiman.
Okay.
I think it's Terry Pratchett, I think.
Neil Gaiman said similar things.
Neil Gaiman. Okay, but my whole point is, like, with this whole discussion of, like, you know, children's films, like even if you go back to like the original Bugs Bunny, like, you know, the animations that endure are not written down to children, but are written in such a way that anybody can enjoy them. And I think that I agree with you, Scott, that this film does it more often than it does not. Mm-hmm. And I definitely understand why they brought, you know, Joss Whedon in, because they probably did bring it in to kind of help elevate it a little more. because there were times where it felt a little uneven. But I think they did the right thing overall, and I do think the dialogue works. So I'm going to give it a 1.
Yeah,
Okay.
like 60-40 or like 65-55 split or however the math works out.
Yeah,
but more on the
I'd probably go.
Works out 100%, 0%.
No, I'd probably say 70-30 or
Sure.
something.
but either way,
I'm just kidding. But that sounds like 1's all around for dialogue.
Mhm.
And Ian, we're going to go to you with Sal.
What I was dismissively shaking my head at when you were talking was about the reason this is on the AFI list is because of the dialogue. It's not. This is the first CGI film. It's the first Pixar film. It ushered in a new era of animation. Very much like why I feel Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs are on the AFI versus many other Disney films that came out.
Ooh, I have a good question for the end of this episode.
no.
So I'm going to talk a little bit about Randy Newman for a moment. He is the bastard child of Warren Zevon and Norman Rockwell.
Oh, man. That's so perfect.
And I actually think there's one Randy Newman song I found interesting once upon a time.
Was it
But
Political Science?
None of them
It's a great
were.
song.
None of them were in this
Okay.
film. And in fact, Randy Newman appeared more often than I thought he would throughout this thing. And because I
Weird.
knew of his "you got a friend in me."
Weird is
bullshit.
Ugly Randy?
Yeah.
It's Ugly Randy Newman?
It's but nonetheless, beyond that, I don't like computer animated films like this. I prefer traditional style hand drawn animation. And I know why it's on the AFI because it ushered in a new era, but I don't like that era. I think that it has there's some when they combine realism with CGI that works to a certain extent, but purely CGI films don't. And I think it's just a personal opinion of mine because I don't like the style. I'm not going to reward it for that. For being the first of that, and I'm going to give it a 0.
That is fair, but I mean, of course, I agree with you, or at least I would argue along with you that yes, the reason this is on AFI is that it was like the new changing of the guard in animated films, and specifically because of the CGI style, for sure. Now, whether or not, like, I think it's fine. Like, I think certainly I would say there are other CGI films, like 100% that I prefer. But I understand why it's culturally significant, and they slapped it on its number 99, so it's almost like an afterthought, like really, to an extent. But like, I had no problem with it in and of itself, even though I prefer other. I think it's been evolved at this point. But yeah, certainly it's had to come from somewhere, and this, what was it, 95, I believe you said, the year it came out?
I mean, I prefer this than VeggieTales
was
being on
95,
AFI.
yeah.
Sure. But yeah, I mean, I get it, like, understand it, so I might just give it a default 1. Like, I had no problems with it. It did what it did for animated films, and Pixar became a powerhouse after that, and other studios working in a similar vein. So like, it's fine. It's not the greatest thing ever, but I think it works, again, almost similar to dialogue, more than it doesn't, and I don't really have a big issue or complaint about it. It's stylistically.
I agree with you guys that I understand why it's on the AFI as well. Anybody who's listening to this often notes when we have an effects heavy movie that if there's practical stuff in it, I often point out like, hey, I appreciate the practical because I can tell there's always that like, well, am I watching a CGI? Am I watching something that's practical? And certain times you need it and certain times you don't. And I know it's like cost effective. And like Ian, I gravitate like when Pixar releases a film, I'm like, oh, I got to go out and see it. I much prefer like Miyazaki. I like the hand drawn stuff. This is not to say that there aren't Pixar films that I enjoy quite a bit.
Sure.
But with that, because so it is, I'm definitely on the, I understand why. So basically to me, it's subjective. I just wanted to address what you were saying, Ian, and I didn't want to discount it at all. But if we're talking about this film in particular, the things that I liked about it the most were the little, and yeah, maybe there were a couple little winks there, but the little details I liked when like instead of a whack-a-mole, you had like whack of an alien, you had the space.
Sure. I mean, that was a reference that you enjoyed.
The aliens, and of course, there's a Vulcan salute at one point, and the creature, the Frankenstein toys, if you will, that crawl out under Sid's bed was very much like the droids in the thing. I mean, there's a lot of different callbacks, but in like the ass kick thing I like, and I thought there was a lot of clever stuff that I enjoyed looking at more than following Woody. Let's put it that way.
I get you.
So I mean, I agree with you. I mean, Randy Newman. You can only have so much Randy Newman. You can only be the bastard child of Norm. I mean, anytime you mention Norman Rockwell, I'm going to be like, okay, Randy Newman just went down because I can't stand Norman Rockwell. But from my experience watching this movie again after like 20 some odd years, I really liked everything else that went on. And so I would give Cylon maybe like a softer one, but probably still giving it a 1.
I'm punishing it for the sins of its children.
That's fair.
So,
I'm probably going to come down on the same camp as you guys. I have seen the movies that came from this, and I do not hate them as you seem to, or I don't hate them as much as I see this as a different style of animation, I guess, right? Like, I don't say
Not
CGI is the
comparing them
death of hand-drawn animation. I say there are two things that still exist in the world, and they're different, but they are both, they're both out there. You can find them, especially in terms of, like, you mentioned Miyazaki films, and, like, the new guard of kind of anime and things like that, and even there are still hand drawn American cartoons out there, but in terms of Randy Newman, I would agree he is a little egregious in the soundtrack.
Sure. I'm not disagreeing with that either, dude. Don't get me wrong.
I do like the referential nature of this movie. I think there's a lot of good references, and like. You see those, they're like a little wink and a nod to the audience, especially like an audience. What I like about it is that those are winks and nods to adults, right? Those aren't winks and nods to the people that are watching, like the people that it's aimed at.
The
referential humor is the lowest form of humor, though.
No, first of all, puns.
Touche. He's got you.
As we have found out through the course of this podcast.
Sure, go on.
And then mime.
In general, Mime is better than Toy Story.
No, come on.
wait, mime?
Yes.
As in the silent killers? Like, like the
Silent
ew,
killers.
gross. No,
All
mimes are horrible.
All right, we'll save the discussion of mime for a different day. But
if Norman Rockwell,
Woman walk well.
if Norman Rockwell was
a mime, then he wouldn't have painted
no, if he was street art, he'd be a mime.
Okay.
Street performance art?
You sure he wouldn't be one of those like, no, those
Statue
statues
dudes?
are way too still for him.
Anyway.
He's got a lot going on.
They're related
Anyway.
to mimes. Don't go near them.
Anyway, we've gotten a little bit off topic. I think that the style of this is more than adequate for me to give it a 1. I like the CGI style, and especially because it changed the way that, especially like, you see a Pixar movie and you recognize it as a Pixar movie to this day, and it's because of this film.
Yeah,
and I like the way that those look. I know that perhaps you don't, but I do.
Romeo and Juliet exists
God, shut the fuck up.
because of Toy Story.
Wait, was Romeo and Juliet? That wasn't Pixar.
I
That was not Pixar. That was straight up Disney or some other.
No, it was probably DreamWorks, but
It might have been DreamWorks.
but
Yeah,
Ian has a point. It exists because of.
true.
Story.
But you also got ants.
Punished for the sins of the sons.
Sure.
You liked ants, really?
It was better than Bug's Life, which was the Pixar version.
All right, my
All right,
friends.
we're
That will
gonna-
be its
all right.
own episode.
Anyway,
Let's go on.
I'm gonna
though.
give Style a 1,
Me too.
and
didn't
I think
agree.
it's 3 1s and a 0.
Yes.
Yes.
And we're gonna go on to recommendation with Scott.
Probably not. Like, I mean, we just discussed for like 10 minutes, like, why it's on the AFI. I have no interest in seeing Toy Story again. The only reason I saw it is because of this, because it rolled up randomly on to do this month's AFI. And like I said, like, I have no childhood nostalgia / affinity for it. So, like, I don't know, like, aside from doing this specific thing, a review, I don't know what would be the point of watching it, or like even saying like, someone's like, hey, let's gather around and hang out and watch a movie. Which one? Why Toy Story? Why? I don't know. So, like, again, a default 0, like, it just, I understand, again, like I said, just to repeat one more time why it's there and why it's on the list, but I personally would not think about it or have no interest in viewing it in any other scenario.
If I may, I just had a thought, which is, basically I was going over my idea of, like, recommend, and I don't know if I would recommend this to somebody who hasn't already seen it. It might be a nice little stroll down memory lane if you've seen it already, but like if you're 35 years old, you probably shouldn't. I mean, you can watch better movies than Toy Story for the first time, right?
Yes.
And then I was like, if you've gotten to this point in our review, you must have seen this movie already. I almost want to start putting recommend at the very beginning of our reviews, and like, you can know if we, but like
if we can go back and maybe change it at the end of it, because sometimes we talk through a movie, it changes minds.
Yeah, that's true. But like, what? Oh man, we'll talk this out later. I'm sorry to
We'll fix it
involve
in
you
post,
in post,
as we always do.
outside of cast stuff. But yeah, I'm gonna give it a 0 probably, because I don't know if I would recommend this to anybody who hadn't already seen it.
There are better Toy Story movies out there. There are better children's movies out there. Go watch the fucking SpongeBob SquarePants movie or something like that.
Go watch Into the Spider-Verse, even if you're a kid or
yeah.
Well, that's a very different type of movie.
I understand, but it's still animated.
I mean, there's all sorts of... And plus, your kids are going to go see what they're going to see. They're not interested in watching Grandpa's Toy Story nowadays. Like, it's... Yeah, I'm going to give it a 0.
If you want to see a good early Pixar film, see A Bug's Life. I love that movie. Fuck you, Steve-O, but I love that movie.
What are you talking about? Why fuck me? I said that Bug's Life was...
I thought you said...
No, you're right.
You were defending
You're right.
Ants.
I didn't say
Definitely
Ants.
fuck you
Ants
is what he's going for here.
Yeah, no, seriously, Steve-O...
But you say no recommend?
No, I'm not going to recommend this film. Go see... I recommend A Bug's Life, or... Go see WALL-E's great. It's a good Pixar film.
That's a fair point.
Probably one of the best animations out there. See Spirited Away. Miyazaki's wonderful. Probably one of my favorite movies of all time. Into the Spider-Verse. There's a dozen films I can before this thing. I would not. I really don't like this film. I didn't like it then. I didn't see any of the other Toy Stories because I didn't like it. So no, I'm not going to recommend it.
At least Woody has a plot in the other ones.
Does he?
So, all that being said, there are 2 animated movies, I believe, on the AFI Top 100. It's this and Snow White.
Yep.
I'm going to guess that we're probably going to say neither one of them belongs on the AFI.
No, we understand why they belong on the AFI.
Okay, well, that's not an argument for today. My question is, if you guys could pick one
different
kids animated movie to be on the AFI Top 100 instead of Toy Story, what would it be?
Who Framed Roger Rabbit?
Not a kids movie.
What? I don't remember. Like the one with Mickey Mouse when he's got all the brooms and shit. Not Mickey Mouse.
Oh,
Fantasia.
Yeah.
Great choice.
Yeah, I was going to say, well, the one I was going to pick was actually from Japan. Fantasia definitely should be on the AFI. Yeah, I
can't pick a movie from Japan.
No, I can't. But but I was going to say, yeah, Fantasia is a great one to put on the AFI.
Boom.
The Aladdin CGI one that just came out.
Oh, God, stop it. First of all, not even animated.
Like a Don Bluth film
Yeah.
or something like that.
Some kind of like early like Looney Tunes stuff or something, or like...
I can't think of anything he did. I've seen a number of his films over time. I can't remember. But there's a lot of like cool stuff out there.
Yeah.
that I guess Disney gets because it's the powerhouse that it is.
It really is.
And it's
With
growing.
3 circles that conquer the world. I believe
I have a
Yeah.
special spot in my heart for The Little Mermaid myself. I saw that movie in theaters when I was really young.
I did
and
as well.
I thought it was
That's fine.
phenomenal.
Oh, what about Dumbo even too? Like I would say that.
Oh, it's
Too
too racist.
racist.
All right.
I
Fair
mean,
enough.
not that there aren't
Good point.
racist fucking movies on the AFI Top 100.
I was going to say, Snow White, I think, is racist too, isn't it? Isn't there some elements of it?
We'll tell you when we get
Against,
to it. But
yeah, we'll see when I watch it again. I haven't seen that movie in 20 years. But all right, I think that's going to do it for us.
yep.
And sorry, Steve, I didn't mean to preemptively fuck you, but I assumed when I said A Bug's Life, you were going to
No, it's not
All
that I
right.
didn't like it. All right,
It's
let's do it.
fair-
We'll talk about A Bug's Life.
It's fair to assume he's going to say something
That is true.
offensive.
I was going to be a jerk.
It's better to assume he's going to be a jerk
He's
than
going to
not
be a
jerk.
Woody.
Anyway,
Don't be a
Scores?
we're going to wrap this up. The scores were... I gave it a 8. Chris, you gave it a 7. Ian, nope, you were the worst. Scott, you also gave it a 7.
Mhm.
And Ian, you gave it
A 6?
a 6.
Yeah.
And that is going to give us a score of
7 something.
We're complete-
7.000.
That's fine. Sure.
Sure.
Yeah, I think that's a fine score for this film.
It's all right.
It is on the lower part of the AFI, so I think it could go away from that
Yeah,
list.
I
I
would
like
agree.
this movie, but I think it could get off the list and that'd be fine. Anyway, we're going to wrap it up. I have been your host, Steve Ramosi, joined tonight by Jonathan Ian Manzer.
It was no troll in Central Park.
And oh, God.
Good God. Come on.
And Scott Thurlow
Back to my toy box.
and Christopher.
to
Morgan.
mediocrity and whatever.
Have a good night.
See you next time.
Editing and engineering by Stephen Ramosi. Music by Christopher Morgan. Check us out on YouTube and iTunes for the shows, and on Facebook and Twitter for updates.